You got to stop looking for the outside circumstances to be the reason why you're positive. You have to assume an energy that's joyful without having it all in front of you. The things, the boyfriend, the money, the job, the career, cannot be your source of happiness. Those are the after effect of your happiness.
Gabrielle Bernstein, a role model for spiritual seekers.
I've heard you talk about joy and how it's such a specific factor in this equation. So when everything is going wrong, how do you find the joy so that you can be a super attractor?
Well, you don't. You're not going to go right from everything's wrong to joy. That's just not, I mean, it's not impossible, but it's not the move. The move is to lean into something slightly better. And so if you're in a really low place, even just leaning into optimism or possibility or hope starts to build you up the ladder towards that ultimate desire, which is joy. But you're not going to go from despair to joy. That's just not going to happen.
I love the word possibility.
Yeah.
That feels exciting and practical too, because you're right. It's hard to be like, everything's going wrong right now. I'm going to be joyful.
You can't. And I think that that's where a lot of people get it wrong, because they're like whitewashing the problem. They're just sort of affirming over it or pushing past it, which only just really allows it to multiply. So what we really need to do when it comes to moving out of a disconnected place or a uncomfortable, sad place is to just reach for that next best feeling. Possibility is the best. I always love the affirmation. It's like probably something I say over and over again throughout the day is I'm open to creative possibilities. Because if something's not working out, okay, it's not working out. So what's the creative possibility that's going to be revealed to me? That mindset shift just opens so many doors. It opens up your awareness to what's possible. If you're in the storyline of, oh, that's impossible, it's not going to happen, of course that's going to just stay impossible.
When did you first notice that your thoughts were actually changing?
Wow, that's a nice question. Well, I've been noticing it all along. I've been in this field for 17 years, and I've been noticing every step of the way that it just gets more and more grace comes in. Very recently, in the last few years, I've felt just a quantum shift of, oh, I'm part of this world, but I'm not stuck in this world. And I have the opportunity, I can think my way into a really good spot most of the time.
That's so cool.
Even when shitty things happen.
What does it feel like when you're in that place?
And not just think my way in, know that there's another way. Yeah. What does it feel like when I'm in that place? Well, I think that it comes back to the word possibility. It just feels open and expansive and upbeat and optimistic and solution seeking and willing to feel into the problem temporarily so that it can be processed. So I'm not ignoring life's issues in any way, shape, or form. I'm actually just working with them. I had a call with my therapist yesterday, and she was like, we hadn't spoken in a while because she was on vacation, and then I had taken some time off. I'm like, no offense, but I was like, I'm doing really good. And she's like, that's because you've been doing the self-help. And of course, I write self-help books, but she's like, but you've been practicing what you preach. So you've become your internal therapist. And it's not that I don't need my own therapist. Of course, I want to keep going with her for a long time. But there's an inner parent within all of us, or an inner therapist, or an inner guide. And when we start to let that part of us be the leader, then our life just is so much more graceful and easy.
When you talk about miracles and being open to them, what's the first step towards recognizing them? Because I'll give you an example. I think, say a brand emails you, say it's like a car company, say it's Acura, and all of a sudden you start seeing Acuras all over the road. Mm-hmm. Is it a coincidence or is it serendipity?
I think that there's different ways of looking at it. So like, if something comes into your awareness and then you see it everywhere, it's typically the opposite. It's like you're seeing it everywhere and then it comes into your awareness. That's usually when you're getting guidance, right? So it's like it can be reversed, of course, but for instance, if somebody keeps telling you, read this book, read this book, read this book, and then another person's like, read this book, and then the book shows up on Amazon, and then the book's here, and the book's there, and then you meet the author on the street, and the author hands you the book. It's like or you get enough messages, and you're like, fine, I'll just buy the freaking book. So that's sort of the synchronistic guidance. Of course, could it be reversed? But I think the reverse is like now it's on your mind, so now you're kind of just noticing and aware of it. So it's more about what's being presented to you that shows up in your awareness, and then that's a form of guidance.
Okay.
And then if you want to ask the universe for a sign, for instance, I'm asking for a sign for I'm hiring somebody new, and I was like, this sounds maybe silly, but this is how I live, and I was like, okay, I need to see a lily because that's one of my signs I ask for. And I hadn't seen it. I walked into this building and there was lilies in the front hall. And then I think that there's a painting with some lilies over there. Yeah, there's lilies on a painting. And so I was like, oh, there's my sign.
How did you come up with lilies?
So
Can you ask for any sign specifically?
yeah, anything you want, you just ask. Yeah. In Super Attractor, I tell a story about how I was trying to conceive. And in that time, I was having a lot of issues with conception and natural conception. So I was just trying, and it was year after year, and I kept not getting pregnant in my mid-30s. And I finally hit this wall where I was like doing some fertility treatment, IUI, and I did my first round of it, thinking like, oh, it's gonna work in the first round, and it didn't. And I was like so depressed and so upset. And my sign for my child was a lily, and I kept asking for the lilies and asking for the lilies. And I was really, really depressed this one day because the first round didn't work. And I sat with my husband, and we were sitting at his desk, and I was crying. My phone was on the desk, and it was off. You know, shut off, not. All of a sudden, this song that wasn't saved in my phone, it was just a song. I was aware. I don't even think I was aware of the song. I know the artist. A song called Way Go Lily starts playing on my fucking phone. And it's like over and over, Way Go Lily, Way Go Lily, Way Go Lily. I pick up the phone. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. This is so strange. I start listening to the lyrics. I'm like, holy shit. And then I look at the name of the album. And the album is I Saw the Sign. And
Is
the
it
song
Ace of Base?
No, it's not. It's Sam Amidon. It's a beautiful song. Yeah, Way Go Lily. And there's so many other levels of synchronicity and then I got pregnant the next month. So it's a sign that you're being guided. It's not always that you're going to getting signs that you're going to get what you want. Sometimes you don't get a sign, and that's a sign too.
Oh, that's kind of like therapy, right? Like no decision's also a decision.
That's correct.
I didn't know that part. No sign is a sign. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, so in my book, The Universe Has Your Back, I give the whole lessons of how to ask the universe for a sign, and people love this. But you can be like, oh, am I on the right track, or is this relationship right for me? But you can't manipulate the universe, right? So you can't be like, I wanted a blue car, but that car's kind of purple, and maybe it's blue, it's bullshit. So you have to close your eyes to it, just say, I'd like to see that sign, and then stop looking. And then just like today, I walked in and I saw the lilies. And then if you don't get it, that's a sign too. So stop looking. That's their message. It's not right, And I really think that people have to make logical decisions and have to really stick to their gut and trust themselves. It's not just about like, am I seeing my sign? But that's always a supportive additional way of getting messages from a spiritual presence.
I grew up Jewish and not religious.
Okay.
And religion was almost...
Me too.
Okay. And moving to LA, I started reading books and being curious about spirituality. And I looked at all of the people in my life that I admire most, and they all believed in God, source, whatever you want to call it. And I was like, what am I missing here? And I've started seeing signs. I've started feeling, and it's really about feeling open.
Mm-hmm.
It's the most wild experience.
Yeah.
For someone who was kind of a skeptic, so to speak.
Yeah.
Well,
you're right. It is about becoming open. And I think that's the whole thing. Yeah.
It's very cool. So 9 books filled with so much love. I was going to say wisdom or advice, but it didn't feel right.
Yeah.
They're filled with love.
It, yeah.
You say manifest a life beyond your wildest dreams. We hear so many people talk about manifestation. The question I got most from people when I put out that I was interviewing you was, I'm doing all the steps. I hadn't heard about this, but somebody said there isn't driftwood. She'll know what that means. I'm visualizing, I'm being open-hearted, I have positive thoughts, I think I've worked through my personal blocks. How can I stay positive when nothing's happening?
Oh, well, you got to stop looking for the outside circumstances to be the reason why you're positive. You have to assume an energy that's joyful without having it all in front of you. The things, the boyfriend, the money, the job, the career, cannot be your source of happiness. Those are the after effect of your happiness. And so if you read any of my books and work any of my books, particularly my latest book, Happy Days, if you work any of these books, I'll show you the way to start to undo any disconnect from that inner joy and start to cultivate that joy even when things aren't working out. Because yes, everything starts to come into your life when you are in a better state, but you can't force it.
Where can people start if they don't know how to manifest? Where to go? I know, obviously.
I would say read Super Attractor, yeah. Or read The Universe Has Your Back and then read Super Attractor.
Did I read it out of order?
Not at all. No, you read what you need. Like if that's what you were hit to read,
Right.
that's what you were ready for, yeah. But I would do that, yeah. And that's a bad answer, but it's kind of, I think if any one of my readers were sitting there and someone said that to them, they'd be like, oh, read this book. So
No, it's true, because I actually, one of the things I loved about Super Attractor is you give specific examples so the ideas don't feel amorphous.
that's right.
Is there a difference between what we attract and what we manifest?
That's an interesting question. No one's ever asked that for me. Okay, so what we attract versus what we manifest. Well, not necessarily, because I think that I would just use that word interchangeably.
Really?
But we attract what we are. We manifest what we believe. So I think it's somewhat interchangeable, because what manifesting is the reflection back to you, the attraction back to you of what you believe you're worthy of, who you believe you are. And so I think I would use those words interchangeably.
That's a really interesting answer. Okay, manic manifesting.
Yeah, I was going to say that reader or that listener who came through was sounding like they might be manic manifesting. So
Just the cadence of the question.
correct. The
Yeah.
manic manifesting is you're a great interviewer, by the way.
Thank you.
The manic The manic manifesting is like when you're, reading all the books and you've got the vision board and you're like saying mantras and you're making wish lists and you're looking for signs and you're just forcing. Being in a relationship with the universe with an energy beyond your own is like any relationship. If you're dating somebody and you're just like constantly calling and constantly like trying to make another plan, they're gonna be like, out, like, no, thank you. And so I think that that's very similar with our relationship to the universe, and that we are often pushing and controlling, and so we're missing that response. We're blocking the actual communication. We're just having a one-way conversation. And so to be in communion with that connection, you have to communicate. You have to listen. You have to not just ask, but you have to listen. You have to slow down. And in that stillness is when you can start to get messages.
I love that word communion that you just used. There's something that feels peaceful about that.
Yeah, totally.
Oprah's podcast, at the beginning, she has this line. She says, "Want it, wish for it, let it go,"
Yeah,
which is kind of the key, right?
that's it.
I think letting it go is part of the manic manifestation issue. That
Totally.
feels
Totally.
like if you want something, how do you let it go?
Well, it's funny that you said that. So I did a Super Soul Sessions talk for her, and it's on her podcast for Oprah. And it's all about surrender.
Yeah.
And it's also based on a chapter in The Universe Has Your Back, all on the spiritual steps to surrender. So that would be a good resource for somebody. So go to YouTube and just watch that surrender, the spiritual steps to surrender. It lays it out for you completely. But I think that the biggest thing is to forget what you think you need. What you think you need is actually so much smaller than what's actually possible for you. So just let that go and open you can want what you want, right?
Yeah.
Ask for it. Is that what she said? Want what you want.
Want it, wish for it.
Want
let
it,
go.
wish for it, let it go. I think that just follow Oprah's advice. That was good.
So, fear. The opposite of love is fear, right? When I was reading, I started reading Marianne Williamson because of you.
Yeah.
And I think she defines a miracle saying that it's when you move from fear to love, which is a cool definition. Is fear ever a good thing?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we have to have fear to not walk in traffic. And I don't think that there's any bad part of who we are. It's just when those parts of us become extreme. So fear in a non-extreme way is what allows us to speak up for ourselves or know how to get out of a room when it's not safe, or not walk in the middle of the street, or whatever it might be, right? Or, maybe even in these days, like maybe wear a mask on a plane. Like it's not always a bad thing, but when fear becomes an extreme behavior or extreme emotion, it can become detrimental because it becomes addictive. It's like, okay, I can never walk out of my house again because I'm afraid of COVID, or when it becomes unmanageable. Mm-hmm. So no emotional state or no way that we live is bad. There's no bad part of who we are. It's just there's parts that become very extreme.
And is fear really the root of anxiety?
Yeah, I definitely believe that anxiety comes from trauma, which is fear, which is unresolved events of fear. Mm-hmm. It's fear that's stuck in the body, it's stuck in the neural loops, and can create a lot of anxiety.
It's so helpful to know that when those feelings come up, you have to think about love.
Well, I would say that you can, like Marianne would say, return to love through a prayer or through an affirmation. But I do believe that there's also this other layer of just befriending that fear. Because if you try to just say, okay, I have this fear and now I'm going to lean towards love, it's not always going to happen that quickly. It's really valuable to start to work with and befriend the fear. And I talk about that a lot in Happy Days, my latest book, where I take a lot of the spiritual principles that I've written about before, but I take it to another level with a lot of therapeutic principles that I've used in my own life and trained in to give people even a deeper exploration of what's going on.
To add on to what you just said, I really have enjoyed learning from you because of that. It feels practical, mm-hmm. And not like Abraham Hicks for me. I'm not there yet. Like, mm-hmm. It's too hard for me to digest. And mm-hmm. so the books feel so applicable.
Great. I'm so happy to hear that. That's beautiful.
I love this quote I read you say, "The way we experience the world around us is a direct reflection of the world within us. If I want to feel supported, I must support myself." What are some tips you have for being your own biggest supporter? So what I'm teaching now that's really at the forefront of my work, and it's the next few books I'll write, is based on a model called internal family systems therapy. And I think that what I'm doing best is translating it because it's sort of dense. But the concept is very simple. We have different parts of who we are that are extreme parts of like childhood trauma, exiled. We shut them away. We're like never talking to you again, whether it's being bullied or abused, whatever. And then we have these other parts of us that are protector parts. So fear is a protector, addiction's a protector, controlling is a protector. And those become very extreme behaviors because they're really activated whenever we get that exiled part kicked up. Are you tracking with me? Yep. Okay. But what we all have is self, and self is the internal therapist, the internal parent, the adult resourced, undamaged part of who we are, right. The compassionate, caring, calm part. And so when we let self start to lead our inner system, everything starts to really relax. And that's how I live now. And that's actually why my therapist said to me, well, you're doing all the self-help, that work of literally self-helping my internal system. So the more access you get to that higher self or inner guide, God within you, whatever you want to call it, the more that voice becomes the louder voice in the room. Mm-hmm. And so when you have problems, you're not going into the protector part of control or fear. Maybe you do temporarily, but you know how to self-soothe. And that's a really cool way of living.
If you like this video and you want to get more Gabby, check out the next one right over here.